Well, there's been intense fighting in the Ukrainian city of Pokrovsk as Moscow continues to expand its offensive in the area. The city is considered an important gateway to the rest of the Donetsk region, which Russian forces are determined to capture and control. Let's go live now to Kharkiv in Ukraine, where I'm joined by journalist Emmanuelle Chaze. Good to have you with us back, Emmanuelle. Now, firstly, what can you tell us about the latest on the ground in this battle of Pokrovsk? Because the reports are that the fighting there is pretty fierce, given that Moscow has deployed reportedly 100,000 troops there.
Good evening, Girish. Nice to join you again. Well, indeed, the situation is very complicated for Ukrainian troops in the embattled city of Pokrovsk. To the admission of Kyiv, the Ukrainian troops are fighting 8 to 9 against 1 in favor of Russia. So it looks pretty grim for the Ukrainian army. However, it still has a foothold within the city. In fact, a few hours ago, a Ukrainian brigade raised the Ukrainian flag over an official building in Pokrovsk. And we can see by this action that it's also very much a war of information, because just a few days ago, Russian soldiers infiltrated within the city, also posted a Russian flag on a blog post at the entrance of the city. So yes, the Ukrainian army is outnumbered there. However, it still defends the city. It still controls parts of the city. There were talks also on the Russian side of an encirclement, a full encirclement of the pockets of the cities of Pokrovsk and its satellite city of Mirnograd. This is not a full encirclement yet, but it doesn't mean that it's easy to get out or in Pokrovsk, because the Ukrainian army there is also dominated because of the number of Russian drones over their heads, over the logistic routes, and of course the crucial part here for the Ukrainian army is to keep those lines of logistics open.
So is there a sense of urgency, Emmanuelle, to get more troops, Ukrainian troops, deployed there to protect Pokrovsk, or perhaps even get some sort of involvement from NATO for support?
Well, I think Ukraine, it's very clear on the Ukrainian side that there won't be foreign troops coming in to defend Pokrovsk. That's quite a given here. However, we've seen just on Tuesday, President Zelensky traveling to the Pokrovsk sector in the Donetsk region to show support and appreciation for the Ukrainian troops there. And just a few days ago, special forces of the Ukrainian army came in reinforcement to try and break this, encirclement that is closing in, that is not full, but closing in on the city of Pokrovsk. It is a key logistic hub for the Ukrainian army, but we have to keep in mind that the Russians have been setting their sights on Pokrovsk for over 20 months now. They've been closing in the city for almost 2 years, and only since this summer, since their shifty strategy, they have now targeted specifically drone units of the Ukrainian army. Only now are they really closing in on the city.
Yes, and can you explain to us, Emmanuelle, why Pokrovsk is such a strategically critical city and area for Ukraine and also for Russia if they wish to capture it?
Well, Pokrovsk, which is Ukrainian according to international law, according to the Ukrainian constitution, Pokrovsk is just the last big city of the Donetsk region, and then it opens up towards the neighboring region of Dnipropetrovsk. And if now Russians indeed manage to make Pokrovsk fall, then it will ease their way towards the Dnipropetrovsk region, neighboring region. But like I said, it's been since they've captured Avdiivka, which is 40 kilometers away, back in February 2024, that they've been trying to get a hold of that city. And if it fell, the Ukrainian troops, the Ukrainian army, which has been fighting for almost 2 years to defend this city, they have already moved what needed to be moved from Pokrovsk. And let's talk about the human cost of those battles. We're talking about what's happening on a military point of view, but Pokrovsk, even last year, and I was there last summer, was a city with 60,000 residents, and most of them, thousands of them came from cities that no longer exist as Ukrainian cities that are under Russian occupation. So you have a lot of internally displaced people who went to the nearest safest, or so they thought, city, which had to flee again. And last year it was 60,000 inhabitants. As of today, there's around 1,000 people left, and they're also at risk, at high risk. We've seen videos of Russian troops infiltrated in the city and just executing those civilians. So the price paid by the Ukrainian population in this embattled region of Donetsk is very high indeed.
Yes, and yes, thank you for reminding us that there is, a massive civilian toll here as well. And aside from that, there's this investigation that's being launched after a Russian missile strike killed a group of elite Ukrainian soldiers who were gathering for a military awards ceremony. What do we know about this incident?
There is so much to say about this situation. So on November 1st, we've heard about a strike in the Dnipro region. We heard that 2 children had been killed as well as 2 civilians. And then as days unfolded, we've found out that actually there was a gathering of soldiers, of servicemen who were there gathered. They all come from the same battalion. They were there for an award. Some of them were receiving medals for their services within the army, and a missile struck. So you had relatives of one of the soldiers, Dmitro Sviatlenko, who's a journalist here in Ukraine, who talked about his 40-year-old brother, who has been through some very difficult battles in Krinky, in Kurakove, for those who follow the frontline battles, where it was already miraculous that he survived, and he died in the rear as he had to attend this ceremony. But according to Ukrainian law, it is forbidden now to organize such gatherings, because Russia has a habit of striking military gatherings of the kind. So now families are asking questions, are asking why this gathering took place. Fellow soldiers are asking why it's as many as 80% of that battalion, so many soldiers had to die in something that could have been avoided. And of course, the government now has to answer.
Yes, and just finally, another concerning development in the context of this war and beyond is Putin's plans for a possible nuclear weapons testing. That's according to Putin in response to Donald Trump wanting to do the same in the US. But nevertheless, how is that news being received in Ukraine?
Well, it is very particular here in Ukraine when we hear about nuclear threats, because the Ukrainian population has been unfortunately accustomed by its warmongering neighbor of such threats. There's been even a drone strike on the sarcophagus, which is around the Chernobyl nuclear power plant, and there's been constant breaches of security in what is actually, if I recall properly, the biggest nuclear power plant in Europe, in Zaporizhia, which is currently illegally occupied by Russia. So this threat is very much felt by Ukrainians who have been through a nuclear catastrophe in the 80s, who are fearing here from Zaporizhia, another power plant at risk of being struck by Russia. They fear very much that this conflict would escalate. You have some people who would say that who would call it bluff, because Putin always talks about red lines and then, he doesn't follow through. But there is a real risk for Ukrainians to be Russia's target, also in case of a nuclear attack.
Okay, Emmanuelle Chaze, really appreciate you giving us those updates there from Kharkiv. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Girish. It's a pleasure to be with you.